Hey everyone, I just wanted to pop in and kind of give an update, a video update. I know some of you prefer kind of the video than just reading type of things, and also just to kind of give you one more source that I think would be awesome for you as you start this whole research process. First of all, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, y'all's participation in the discussion boards and your responses in your asynchronous assignments have been just a joy to read and review. I can tell that you are putting so much thought and effort into this class, and I know it can be so hard in an online class. I've taken online classes myself, and it can be sometimes hard to forget that you have something or just kind of gloss over some of the content, but I can tell that all of you are just taking so much time to really read and absorb the information, especially like this week's discussion where research starts with the thesis statement. I love this so much, this whole concept behind it, because bias can creep into our writing very, very easily. And I've mentioned, I try to pop in the discussion boards and make some comments. I'm sorry if I can't hit everyone's, but I do just to monitor and make a few comments every now and then. Just because I don't respond to yours doesn't mean that I haven't seen it or I didn't like it. But I just love what some of you are saying where writing is fluid. I mean, it is 100%. That's why in your proposal prompt, I said your working thesis, because it is a working thesis. It can change over time as you get into your research. You might realize, oh, I believe something a little bit different than I originally thought. And so as you're starting your research, the number one thing is just to look up stuff about your topic. Like right now, I don't want you necessarily looking for sources that, yes, please always be looking for sources you can use in your research paper, but just start learning more about your topic, because you don't want to get into the nitty gritty of your research. Like next week, we're going to be starting to hit on the annotated bibliography and wind up wasting your time with a whole bunch of sources that you really don't need. So what I wanted to show you real quick is the TEL, the Tennessee Electronic Library. And this is another really, really good source tool for you to use to kind of find information about your topic, or if you're still having a hard time kind of narrowing down a topic, here, this is a good place to go, because I want to show you one particular source on here. So students, if you click on students in the TEL, and y'all are wonderful college students doing a fantastic job. They have academic databases too. Academic OneFile is a really, really good one. You can find all sorts of information on it. But what I want to show you right here, real quick while we're getting there, Gale eBooks. That's another really, really good one that can have a lot of information for you. Let's see, let me try to find it. Yes, Opposing Viewpoints. This is an amazing source right here, because what you can use it for is to look for basically opposing viewpoints. It helps you see the other side of things. So let's get in here. Might take just a second to load, and I'm sorry about that. So it has a lot of different topics. Like it has some that comes up like the whole body positivity thing. That's a really, really important one. Some people, the argument is if you're overweight, that's not healthy. But then the other point could be, but there are lots of people who are overweight who are perfectly healthy. This their genetics, and there's nothing you can do about it. So like it will have some popular topics that you can kind of go through and just kind of click to cell phones in school. That is a really hot topic right now. Rutherford County schools where my children go to school, they have banned cell phones, but then they're not really enforcing it in some of the schools right now. All sorts of interesting stuff going on. Vaccines. That's a really hot topic. But, you can also browse for different things. Like, let's do autism and vaccines. So it will have all these different viewpoints that you can go through. And so like here, vaccines may cause autism, vaccines do not cause autism. So it kind of gives you both sides where you can go through and read articles or whatever pulls up So that way you can find more information to kind of help you decide which direction you want your paper to go to. And that kind of ties back to our discussion post article, is starting with kind of these open-ended questions and kind of doing your research to see what do you really believe on a topic, and this one would be a really great source for you. You can also click and do peer-reviewed journals, because peer-reviewed basically means is that they have been vetted by other sources, and so that's a really important as you try to find potential sources for your paper, is that you know that they're credible. Like I will be mentioning in your annotated bib prompt, is that you're going to be trying to find things that follow the rhetorical appeals of ethos, pathos, logos. Ethos is credibility. Y'all are college students, and so you're not experts in that field. So you're trying to find articles from people who are experts in the field, and that's what's going to give your paper credibility. So like me being an English teacher who has degrees in English and writing, if I were to write a paper, let's say on the history of the English language, I would kind of have some credibility because I have a degree in this type of thing. But let's say I wanted to write a paper on vaccines and autism. I am not a doctor. So if I was going to write that paper, I'd be needing to bring in sources that are very credible. That's what's going to give it that credibility, that ethos. Logos is both in how a paper is organized. Is it logically organized so you can follow it, but also is it does it have sources that are credible? So it kind of hits on both the ethos and logos. Pathos is the emotional appeal, and that's basically making sure that you can connect to your audience. Does it connect in a way? A lot of very academic type articles won't necessarily have pathos, an overwhelming amount of pathos, but it's basically how the emotional appeal of an article. So we'll get into more of that as the class progresses. But just this opposing viewpoints would be a great place for you to go to find information, find potential sources, and to, especially if your working thesis is one of those types of questions, like to type in that question and see what comes up to help you see all sorts of different viewpoints in order to help you come up with a good, solid, strong thesis. So I did just want to hit on one thing real quick, because as you're starting to do your research, you might be thinking, okay, I want to make sure I'm not wasting my time with finding a whole bunch of sources that I'm not going to wind up using. So I always encourage students, as I said, just read about your topic, learn more about it, so that way you can kind of find the direction you want your paper to go in. I am not a big fan of strict outlines. I think that they are too constraining and it can be hard. So let's say, though, that you want to make sure, again, that you're not wasting your time. So I do recommend at least a scratch outline. Doesn't have to be anything overly strict or whatnot. So start with that baby research where you're just finding out what you believe about your topic, right? Not trying to necessarily find sources. If you find a source, awesome. But let's just solidify what you believe for your paper. So what I did is I actually kind of created just kind of like a little baby scratch outline over here with the whole autism. Did vaccines play a role in it? So my topic is latest theories on causes and what causes autism. So I could do some baby research on it. And in my research, really trying to find out what I believe, is like, oh, wow, maybe vaccines don't have anything to do with autism. So maybe in my baby research, I found a whole bunch of stuff that basically debunked that myth. So I also found a whole bunch of things that say what could cause autism. So, and in that research, I found that it could be genetics and prenatal and postnatal environment. And I think that's really interesting. So I think right now my working thesis is this. After I've done the research and after I've kind of figured out what I believe on the topic, I can come up with this working thesis, or I could make it more of that open-ended question like it was discussed in the article. So I already know that when I make my paragraphs, the individual paragraphs, I know that I want to at least have an intro for my first paragraph. And I know that I want to give some background information on autism because my audience might not know a lot about it. And so I want some sort of quote or saying that lets my audience know, hey, I'm having some credibility here. I want you to know exactly what autism is, but I'm an English teacher. I'm not a doctor. So let's bring in something from the experts. So let's say I find this great sentence from the CDC. And all I did was I highlighted it and I pasted it kind of in my rough outline and included the URL so that way I can go back to it to make the citation if I decide to use that. Let's say in my second paragraph, I want to talk about the vaccines cause autism myth. Well, I've read up a lot on this. Actually, my oldest was on the spectrum, so I kind of actually do know a little bit about autism, but again, I'm not an expert. So, but I remember hearing about this vaccine causes autism myth, and I already know a lot about it. So I don't necessarily need to bring in an outside source. And a lot of people know about this as well. So it falls under the umbrella of common knowledge. And so you don't necessarily have to find a quote or a summary or paraphrase for every single paragraph that you're using in your paper. But let's say for my third paragraph, I know I want to go into, from the baby research I did, I want to go into something about the vaccine/autism debunked myth. And so let's say I just happened to find one on the MTSU library database. And so I can kind of, this isn't the exact quote, I just put in a filler there to kind of show you how I do this, but I could put the link right here so I can go back and go to it later and know, hey, I might want to put it in this paragraph. This is just a suggestion. You don't have to do it. The key that I say that happens in 1020 is finding what works for you. Because what works for me, this kind of works for me, it might not work for you. It's just a suggestion. But it is really important to kind of help organize your sources and whatnot, so that way you just don't wind up going down the rabbit hole of research. I do this. I can start researching something and 2 hours later somehow I'm on a completely different topic and I really don't know how I got there. I fall down the rabbit hole hard when it comes to researching. And so just for time's sake, some of you might find something like this helpful. I do, because it keeps me from starting with researching autism. The next thing I know, I'm looking up vaccines, and the vaccines lead to the history of vaccines. And all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, penicillin started during World War II, I think it was. And then all of a sudden I'm researching something on World War II that has nothing to do with it in the first place. So just for me saying that, just to show you that it can happen. So I hope this is helpful for you. Keep up the excellent, excellent work. I am so thrilled with how awesome all of y'all are doing. If you feel like you're falling behind or need any help, again, contact me at any time. This is what I'm here for.